There is something almost no one tells you about acceleration, especially in faith spaces. It is not sustainable to move faster than your nervous system feels safe to move. And that statement alone explains why so many sincere, faith filled, intelligent people feel stuck, even while they're doing all the right things. Listen, you can have vision, you can have calling, you can pray, plan, and prepare, and still feel slow. Not because you're disobedient, not because you're lazy, not because God is withholding something from you, but because your body is carrying stress it was never designed to carry long term. And stress, it doesn't just affect how you feel, it affects how you perceive time. Hi, if you need to meet, my name is Raquel, and I'm your GPS for success. Let's get started. Breakthrough. When people describe feeling behind, they usually talk about circumstances. They'll say things like, I have too much on my plate. There's not enough time. I feel like I'm always catching up. Does this sound like you're somebody that you know? But what they're actually describing is internal overload, not an external shortage. So, neuroscience shows us that when the nervous system is under sustained stress, the brain shifts out of long term, future orientated thinking and into short term survivor mode. So, in your survivor mode, the brain prioritizes threat over possibility. Creativity, what happens? It starts to shrink down and narrows. Decision making becomes exhausting, right? That thing about decision fatigue, it is real. Focus becomes rigid and everything, it just feels urgent. And this is why stressed people often feel busy, but not effective. They're not advancing, they're managing, and management stretches time. The Bible describes this dynamic in relational language, not scientific language, but it's the same truth. Proverbs tells us this: as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Scripture does not separate thought from state. The heart in the Bible is not just emotion, it is the center of trust, perception, decision making, and direction. It's part soul and part spirit. So, in modern terms, we would say something like your internal state determines your external movement. When the heart is burdened, anxious, or divided, movement slows, not as punishment, as consequence. And this is why stress is not just something you push through, stress is a biological condition. When the stress response is activated, your body releases hormones designed for short term danger, not sustained productivity. And that system was meant to help you survive a moment, not live your entire life inside of it. When it stays on too long, you might recognize these things, right? Your brain reduces access to higher reasoning. Literally, we go into chemical chaos instead of chemical bliss. Our planning feels overwhelming. Decisions feel heavier than they actually are. Time feels compressed and hostile. And this is why stressed people say, I don't have time to think. I can't see clearly. I feel frozen. I need clarity. They're not being dramatic. Their system is just constrained. Scripture speaks directly to this state. Isaiah writes, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you. Peace here is not passive. It is stability of focus. Neuroscience, it confirms this. When the nervous system is regulated, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for discernment, planning, and follow through, comes back online. Peace restores access, but stress, it blocks it. And this is why peace is not optional if you want acceleration. Colossians reinforces this when it says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts." The word rule means to govern, to act as an umpire. Peace decides what thoughts get airtime. Peace decides what fears are dismissed. Peace decides what actions move forward. And without peace, effort multiplies, it can, but progress does not. Eventually, there's a price to pay for it. With peace, though, movement becomes efficient. And this is also why willpower fails under stress. People try to override stress with discipline, pressure, or spiritual intensity. But your willpower is finite. Under stress, it drains faster. You're not weak, you're overloaded. Scripture names this clearly: an anxious heart weighs a man down. Heavy hearts move slowly. What have we just done in the first few minutes? We just established something foundational. You cannot move faster than your nervous system feels safe to move. I mean, you can again, right? But it's not sustainable. And now we need to go one layer deeper. Because if stress slows down time, then the obvious question becomes, what actually restores movement? The answer is not pressure, it's not discipline, it's not doing more, it's creating safety. And this is where Jesus becomes our clearest model. If anyone carried responsibility, pressure, and expectation, it was King Jesus. Crowds followed him. People demanded healing. Religious leaders, they watched him closely. Disciples depended on him. And yet, scripture repeatedly tells us something striking. He withdrew, not once, not occasionally, but often. Luke tells us that Jesus frequently withdrew to quiet places to pray. This wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Jesus understood something most people ignore: authority flows from regulation. Rest was not something he earned after productivity, it was something he protected before depletion. And from a neuroscience perspective, this makes perfect sense. When the nervous system is regulated, the brain regains flexibility. Problem solving, it improves. Decision making becomes clearer. Emotional reactivity decreases. Time feels spacious again. Regulation restores access. This is why King Jesus could move from calm authority while others rushed in panic. He was not governed by urgency, he was governed by alignment. This also reframes how we understand rest. Rest is not inactivity, rest is recovery of capacity. Isaiah tells us, "Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." The word wait here does not mean passive delay, it means to exchange. You exchange your strain for his steadiness, your overload for his order, your urgency for his timing. Renewed strength is not just physical energy, it's clarity, it's stamina, and it's focus restored. That renewal accelerates movement. Another way scripture describes this is through the concept of burden. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light." Light burdens move faster. Heavy burdens, they slow everything down. And neuroscience confirms this: cognitive load, the amount of mental and emotional weight you're carrying, it directly impacts how efficiently you can act. The more you carry internally, the slower execution becomes externally. And this is why people with fewer emotional burdens often move faster, even with fewer resources. They're not dragging unresolved weight behind them. And this brings us to a critical acceleration practice found in scripture directly. Cast all your cares upon him because he cares for you. Casting is not denial, it's offloading. When you cast a care, you remove it from your internal system and you're placing it somewhere else. Neurologically, this signals safety. Safety tells the brain, I don't have to solve this alone. I'm not under threat. I can think again. And that signal restores access to higher reasoning. Higher reasoning restores movement, and movement compresses time. This is not poetic, it is practical. Many people think faith means caring more. Biblically, faith means caring less. This is why peace is described as something that guards your heart and your mind. Guarding implies protection from intrusion. Peace protects you from overthinking, emotional flooding, panic driven decisions, self attack, time distortion. Peace doesn't slow you down, it clears the path. This is also why frantic movement is not acceleration. Rushing is often a sign of stress, not speed, not wisdom. When people rush, what happens, right? Mistakes increase, decisions are fragmented, energy drains, and then you end up reworking things, right? That multiplies. But when people move from peace, actions are cleaner, follow through improves, recovery is faster, momentum sustains itself. This is the difference between force and flow. Scripture gives us one more critical insight here. In Psalm 127, it says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who will build it will labor in vain. Vain labor is not sinful labor, it's misaligned labor. It's work done without rest, effort without peace, movement without safety. And it costs more than it produces. Acceleration requires alignment first. So here's the truth we need to anchor before moving on. Speed does not come from urgency, it comes from safety. Momentum does not come from pressure, it comes from peace. And acceleration does not come from doing more, it actually comes from caring less. So, in the next part of this episode, in the next segment, we're going to move into embodiment. We'll talk about how to recognize emotional drag in real time, how to regulate your nervous system without avoidance, how to restore peace quickly when stress spikes, and how to begin moving again without forcing yourself. Because understanding changes perspective, but practice, that changes timelines. We're going to go there next. See you on the other side.
Thank you for watching Prospera TV Network. We hope you're enjoying the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
It takes one yes to turn it all around. One step of courage where faith is found. From broken to beautiful, from ashes to grace. Every soul reborn in a whisper's place. Don't wait for You're 1 yes away.
Now that we've established why stress slows time and why safety precedes speed, we need to talk about application because understanding this intellectually, it's not enough. Acceleration happens when your body learns what your mind already believes. This is where many people get stuck. They agree with the truth, they believe the scripture, they understand the neuroscience, but their nervous system hasn't caught up yet. And the nervous system always votes first. So here's the simplest way to say it: regulation is the fastest way to acceleration. Regulation is the process of bringing your body out of threat and back into safety. When your system feels safe, decisions require less energy, focus becomes clear, execution becomes easier, recovery happens faster, time stops feeling heavy. This is not theory, this is practice. So let's make this practical. The first step in regulating your nervous system is recognition. Most people don't realize they're stressed until they're exhausted. But stress shows up much earlier. It'll show up as like a tightening in your chest, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, and then we give it a name. And then the labels we give our name because of the racing thoughts make us feel better, but it doesn't really stop the process. Irritability, a sense of urgency without clarity, difficulty starting simple tasks. You just like, I don't want to do it. You just keep on dragging to do those simple things. These are not signs that something is wrong with you, they're just signals. Your system is saying, I don't feel safe moving forward at this speed. That's it. Ignoring those signals does not create acceleration, it creates shutdown. Scripture gives us wisdom here again. The Bible repeatedly tells us to pay attention. Be still and know that I am God. That's not a command to stop living, it's an instruction to pause long enough to reorientate yourself. Stillness is not an activity, it is regulation. When you pause intentionally, you give your nervous system a chance to reset, and reset restores access. Here is a simple regulation practice you can use immediately. And if you can, if it's safe to do so, you can always come back to this. Pause. Place your feet on the ground. Take a slow, deep breath through your nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That extended exhale tells your body there is no immediate threat. This is not just a relaxation trick, it's actually a biological instruction. When the body receives a signal of safety, the brain follows. The second step is naming it. Stress thrives in vagueness. When everything feels overwhelming, the nervous system stays activated. But when you name what's happening, threat decreases. So instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, try, I'm feeling pressure around that decision. I'm noticing fear about starting. I'm carrying tension about the outcome. Naming brings clarity. Clarity brings containment, and containment actually brings calm. And this is why scripture says, cast your cares. You cannot cast what you do not identify. The third step is shrinking the action. A dysregulated system cannot handle large tasks, but it can handle small, clear actions. Acceleration does not begin with big moves, it begins with executable ones. So ask yourself, what is the smallest step I can take today without forcing myself? Not the most impressive step, not the most productive step, the most doable step. Completion sends a signal of safety, and safety restores momentum. And this is how timelines begin to collapse. Jesus modeled this kind of embodiment with so much wisdom constantly. He didn't rush, he didn't panic, he didn't respond from pressure. He responded from alignment. And when urgency surrounded him, he moved at the speed of peace. That was not delay, that was authority. And here's something important to understand: regulation is not a one time event, it is a practice. Life will interrupt you, stress will spike, emotions will surface. Acceleration does not require that you never get dysregulated, it requires that you recover quickly. And the faster you return to safety, the less time you lose. And this is why grace is so essential. Self attack, it prolongs stress, but gentleness restores regulation. Scripture tells us that God is gentle and lowly in heart. Gentleness is not weakness, it is strength under control, which is really good for all us control freaks. As you practice regulation, something shifts. You stop forcing yourself to move, you start allowing movement to emerge. Your tasks, they feel lighter, decisions, they feel cleaner, time feels less hostile. This is not because life becomes easier, it's because your system became safer. In this next part of the episode, we're going to talk about integration, how regulation becomes identity, how peace becomes your default, and how acceleration becomes sustainable, not situational. Because the goal is not to move fast once, the goal is to become someone who moves forward consistently, calmly, and with authority. So we're going to close that loop right now. As you begin to regulate your nervous system and move from safety instead of pressure, something important starts to happen. You stop negotiating with yourself. Decisions become quieter. Action becomes simpler. Follow through feels dramatic. This is where acceleration becomes sustainable. Not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you are no longer fighting yourself to move forward. One of the biggest shifts people experience at this stage is realizing that progress doesn't require constant emotional intensity. It requires consistency without self attack. This is where many people unintentionally sabotage acceleration. They assume that if something doesn't feel charged or urgent, it must not be effective. It's just because they're actually addicted to that way of being. So they equate calm with complacency. They wait for motivation to return before they move again. But motivation is not the engine of progress, safety is. And when your system feels safe, you don't need hype to act. You don't need pressure to follow through. You don't need fear to push you into motion. You move because movement feels natural again. And this is what scripture points to when it talks about being led by peace. Peace does not mean being passive. Peace means you're no longer internally divided, and division is what slows time. Another shift happens here, and it's subtle but powerful. You begin to trust yourself again, and not in a prideful way, in a grounded way. You trust that when you decide something, you're going to act. You trust that if you get interrupted, you'll return without shame. You trust that you don't need to start over every time life happens. This kind of trust restores momentum, and it also restores dignity. Scripture tells us that God is faithful to complete the work he began in us. That faithfulness isn't just about outcomes, it's about process. It's about becoming someone who can carry progress without collapsing under it. Acceleration without trust, it leads to burnout. Acceleration with trust, that leads to stewardship. And this is also where identity begins to stabilize. You stop asking, why can't I just be consistent? And then make consistent like your word for the year. You end up knowing instead, I move when I'm aligned. And that identity shift alone can save you years. And most importantly, or maybe just as important, frustration. Because when identity changes, behavior follows automatically. You're no longer trying to convince yourself to act, you're acting from who you already know yourself to be. This is what it looks like to live in what I call compressed time, not rushed, not frantic, but responsive. When you remove emotional drag, simplify action, and regulate your system, time stops feeling like something you're fighting against. It becomes something you're cooperating with. Now, here's where support matters because while regulation is something you can learn, execution still needs structure. Most people don't struggle because they don't know what to do. They struggle because they overthink the next step, they overwhelm themselves with options, they lose momentum after a disruption, they turn minor setbacks into major stalls. And this is why I created Task Animal. Task Animal is not about productivity hacks or forcing discipline. It's designed to help you to decide what actually matters today, shrink tasks into doable actions, work with your nervous system instead of against it, recover quickly when life interrupts, and to build momentum without pressure. It's a simple, supportive tool that meets you where you are and helps you move forward without activating stress. Think of it as a daily companion for execution, one that understands how humans actually work. Because acceleration doesn't happen in theory, it happens in the day to day decisions. You don't reopen tomorrow. If this episode helped you see why things have felt heavier than they needed to be and why speed begins with safety, then Task Animal is a place to deepen that work. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to become someone else. You need support that honors how you're wired and helps you move consistently from peace. Everything you need to know is available at yourgpsforsuccess.net. That's yourgpsforsuccess.net. And if you want to connect directly, you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Remember this: acceleration is not about pushing harder, it's about caring less. And when you move from alignment, time responds. We'll continue building on this together on the next episode. Until then, may God's riches and best be yours. Bye for now.
Breakthrough. This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez,